So after pretending for a few months that I ever want to knit anything else, it's time to knit the fall sweaters of my dreams. Hi, hello, my name is Allie. I'm an independent graphic designer coming to you from just outside Toronto, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, how it's going, and what it's costing me. So today we're officially diving into fall knitting with my brand new fall cast on, despite the fact that, the weather, is it fall weather? On some days the weather agrees that it's fall. We've had a few days with like the nicest, freshest crisp in the air, and I'm so happy as like a true Gilmore girl at heart. But we've also had plenty of days where honestly it's been the kind of days that are what I wish the summer had felt like if the summer hadn't been so hot that I do believe it was one of the rings of hell that we've now entered into. So it's been really nice to get some actually nice, just warm summer feeling days here and not I can't breathe outside. So to say that I'm excited for fall, understatement. Now, as for my mug and tea of the day, since it's fall, I brought out my Halloween mug collection, which is this perhaps a little bit premature? Yes, but as someone who has 3 Halloween mugs, which is perhaps too many mugs to revolve around a small holiday, I feel like I have to bring them out early enough to get a respectable amount of use out of them, while still keeping them novel for the season. So this is my little ghostie who's just from Indigo, but look how cute he is. And in this mug, I'm drinking a new green tea that my sister recently brought back for me from her trip to the Azores. This was part of my birthday present, and it's so good, which is amazing. What's less amazing is that I don't think I can ever have it again unless I travel to the Azores. So is it the worst thing in the world to be oh no, I guess someday I have to go on this beautiful trip? It's good to have goals. Now, as for what I'm wearing today, this is actually a double knit day because this is my cloud bow layered over my Fausta, which is a combo that I did not anticipate when I was making the cloud bow. It did come after the Fausta, but I've since found that the Fausta is the best thing that I have to layer under it. I do have other options. I had bought a white ribbed tank top thinking that would be really good to go under this. And I've just ended up finding it's very hard to find necklines that work with this because it comes up high, but it's also wide on the sides, and so I didn't like how the tank top was coming in here. And my Fausta is my widest set neck of anything, and you can't really see, but I like the fun kind of color blocking that it does there with the sheerness and the square neck of this top. So not planned when I made the cloud bow, but it's kind of turned out, oh my god, I just threw tea all over myself. That's so great for me. Anyway, so yeah, that was not planned, but the tea or these going together is more the one that I meant. But it's been working out really well, and to check in on our cost per wear on these. Oh, actually first I want to tell you about these patterns in terms of size inclusivity. So the cloud bow top accommodates bust measurements, as in your body, I'm not talking finished measurements of the garment, from 26 inches to 62 inches. And the Fausta, which is designed to be a bralette, I made it into a whole top. It accommodates busts from 30 inches to 56 inches, which is shy of what I usually like to use as my benchmark for patterns that I knit for myself that I feature on the channel. But the thing that made me want to give this pattern a little bit more benefit of the doubt than usual is the wild amount of fit customization that's built into it. You're working with an under bust measurement and also a cup size measurement, and I could not be happier with the way that this top fits. It's just so good. So now to look at that cost per wear, my total project cost for my cloud bow was $130 Canadian. And since I finished it last summer, I've worn it 8 times, which for something that's a pretty distinct statement piece, I don't feel like that's a bad number at all. And that puts our current cost per wear at $16.25. And then we have my Fausta top, which cost me $75 to make, and I have worn it 12 times, which puts its current cost per wear at $6.25, which feels like it's well on its way to working itself down to a really reasonable sounding number. All right, so let's get into that new fall cast on. So I am knitting the Rivendell Pullover by Sari Nordland, and let me give you these project stats real quick. So this is a DK weight pattern that accommodates busts that measure between 28.75 inches and 61.25 inches. This pattern costs €8.90 or about $15 Canadian. This pattern is allegedly knit up on 3.5mm needles, but as previously discussed, Sari Nordland's gauge remains elusive to most of us on her written needle size. And this is a seamless top-down construction in general, for sure. Though I think that this is what would be considered a European shoulder construction. I cannot to save my life remember whose podcast I was watching recently where this came up, where they had just learned that this was called that, but the thing where you start knitting a sweater with kind of a trapezoid that makes up the upper back, and then you pick up along the tops of the shoulders to start the 2 front pieces, and then you join in the round. So I believe that is what marks a European shoulder construction, and that is what's happening for this one. So I think that this is a European shoulder construction, which I've previously done in my Lyon sweater and also in my call-up pullover, which is also by Sari Nordland, both of which I did earlier this year, and I really enjoyed the construction of those. I was really impressed by how just tidy it felt, and even as someone who hates picking up stitches, it's such a short stretch when you're just doing like the little sort of shoulder, not saddle, but where shoulder saddle would be. I don't know. I found it not as stressful as I tend to find picking up stitches. I think because it's just such a short distance. Like if you mess something up, it's so easy to start over. It's so low stakes and it's over so quickly for something that I don't enjoy doing, but I actually have not been hating it in this context. And I just love the really like beautiful crisp lines that it gives you at the back of the shoulder. So I'm excited to be doing another one that's set up this way. And what's really special about this project to me is that I am knitting it out of my yarn that I picked up on my trip to Peru earlier this year. So this is 100% baby alpaca from Manos de la Comunidad in this really beautiful green color. I have 10 balls of this. They're each 50 grams, and I'm so excited to knit this up into something that the color just so vividly reminds me of the trip. And I'm so excited about all the texture in this pattern that really called to mind for me all the textile arts that I got to see everywhere. So this yarn cost me $234 Canadian. Adding in the pattern cost puts our current total project cost at $250 Canadian. And I have officially cast this on, which I'm very excited about. I actually cast it on my birthday. So how fitting to start a new project, to start a new year of life. So I've got some knitting to show you. So in my previous video, I was laying the groundwork for this. I hadn't actually cast it on, but I was talking about it. And I was discussing how the pattern tells you to make 2 swatches. And I was like, I don't know about that. That seems annoying. I'll probably just do one. It wanted me to swatch the seed stitch and also the cable pattern separately. But I was kind of like, what does one do with that information? Because these all occur in the same row. Am I supposed to change my needle size multiple times in each row? I will not be in the business of doing that. I will just go off the seed stitch. Ended up knitting 2 swatches anyway, though these 2 are actually just both seed stitch. So here's the deal. So this pattern, as I said, it's written to be knit up on 3.5mm needles, but I was like, not for 1 second do I think that I will be able to meet Sari's gauge on 3.5mm needles. Let me size up to 4 and see what that looks like. So that's when I created this swatch, which isn't the texture of it so fun. I really love the look of seed stitch and it looks quite nice, excellent. Does not meet gauge, like even a little bit, like it's still quite small. I think that this measured 4 inches when I cast on the number of stitches for 5 inches. So we are a little bit off. It's also shorter than it's supposed to be this way, but seeing how off it was, I was like, I don't know that I think that I could upsize my needles enough to meet gauge without it looking weirdly open, which flashbacks to working on my pullover. And this is where I'm confused about Sari Nordland's gauge, because I understand I'm a very tight knitter. It makes perfect sense to me that people who are looser knitters would be able to get closer to her gauge. What I don't understand is that at the point where you're knitting so loosely that on 3.5mm needles, you would make a swatch that is like a whole inch wider than this, right? Does your fabric not look weirdly open? Like, does it not look not like solid fabric anymore? Or is there something that is different from what would be produced by a naturally loose knitter versus what I would produce if I knit this up on, say, like a 5mm needle to meet gauge, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, is there a difference in the quality of fabric from a loose knitter on a 3.5 versus a tight knitter on a 5 that produce the same numerical gauge? Is there a difference in the quality of that fabric? Because I can't figure out how I would match her gauge without my fabric looking weird. So like, is this a difference in how I knit that cannot be compensated for in an equivalent way by just upsizing my needles? Or is it just a difference in like what I expect my fabric to look like in terms of how solid I expect mine to be versus how solid Sari expects hers to be? I would love to know if you have thoughts on this. But so because I was like, in no world am I gonna match her gauge here, I don't think. I was like, well, maybe I should just see what it looks like on the recommended 3.5mm needles. And if you're like, why would you go more off gauge? What are you talking about? Here's was my thinking. Because I'm knitting this out of 100% baby alpaca, I have gotten several cautions about like, just beware, alpaca really grows. And particularly in a way where alpaca doesn't have the elasticity of wool, so it is prone to stretch under its own weight. And because it doesn't have that elasticity, it doesn't like snap back the way wool does. So it tends to just kind of like stretch over time and then stay there. So this is what I was thinking when I was like, well, maybe I should just try the 3.5mm, because over time it will also stretch, and maybe having it start as a tighter fabric will kind of help mitigate some of that stretch factor and keep it from getting to a point where it looks stretched out. Because some of the cautions that I was getting weren't just like, beware it's gonna grow, but they were like, you might not want to knit a sweater out of this. Like you might want to just knit a scarf or something, because I think that you're going to be disappointed in what a sweater looks like as you wear it over time. Just the amount of stretch that's going to get added, which like, that's sort of disheartening. I'm gonna be stubborn and I'm gonna forge ahead on this, because I would like to think that I can mitigate some of these things, but we'll see in the months to come whether or not this is a fool's errand. But that was my thinking in swatching, which one's the little one? This one. But I was like, well, that would give it the kind of maximum fortitude against stretching out the tighter the stitches start. But they came out, this one is like noticeably smaller. Oh, also you can see the spot on my arm where this week because it was my birthday, I went out to a lunch with my sister and she told the waiter it's my birthday, which is my least favorite thing in the world. And they brought my brunch pancake with a candle in it that I proceeded to like stick my arm in when I was reaching for something, and fully burned myself for my birthday. So that was fun. Anyway, so these are noticeably different in size. However, when you look at them up close, like I feel like the fabric looks virtually identical. And I was like, well, I'm aware that in this project, yardage is a thing I'm going to have to be looking at. When I bought this in Peru, there was literally like no signal where I was buying this. So I couldn't even like look at my Ravelry to pull up a project and be like, how much yardage do I need? So I bought a like 10 ball package of it. That's how they were like by default. And I was like, that looks like lots for a sweater, right? And I asked, there was a woman working there, and I was like, that's enough for a sweater, right? And she was like, oh yeah, totally, no problem. And then I got it home, was looking at yardage and was like, I mean, like, I think I definitely can make myself a sweater out of this, but I do need to be kind of like aware and kind of pick projects strategically. I did rule out some previous contenders based on yardage, and then based on the fact that, again, I don't think I'm going to be able to match her gauge, which means I'm going to be working at a smaller gauge and therefore using more stitches per inch, more yarn per inch. I'm getting a little bit more worried about yardage, except that I truly believe that this pattern would be beautiful cropped. I think I would really like how this looks cropped, so I'm very open to that outcome if it goes that way. I think it's pretty likely to go that way at this point, honestly, but just in the interest of not using more yardage than needed for no discernible reason, because these look the same to me, I am gonna go with the 4mm needles just to buy myself that like little bit of extra wiggle room and have to be compensating slightly less for my gauge in the measurements that I'm choosing, but I still am having to compensate a lot. And this has kind of been like getting this project to the point of casting on took a lot of like consideration of different factors and going back and forth. And did I make the right decision? Who's to say? Still don't know, but I'm gonna walk you through my thought process and where we currently are, and then we'll just have to wait and see if my conclusions were correct. So in terms of the size that I picked, so I went into this thinking I'm gonna need to size down because I'm knitting with alpaca and everybody's telling me it's gonna grow, so I'm gonna need to knit a size down, right? Then I knit my gauge swatch and I'm like, okay, well, my gauge is really small, which would suggest I need to go up in size. Where do these two meet? Do I just knit the size that I normally would and those two cancel each other out? I don't think it's unfortunately quite that one-to-one. So I needed to figure out basically how to account for the alpaca stretch factor in the context of this tight gauge. And so I did a lot of Googling, I did a lot of like looking at weird like Reddit threads. And here are sort of my findings. So key finding, I was seeing a lot of talk about alpaca stretching vertically a lot more than it stretches widthwise. Because of that thing I was saying about the elasticity, it's really that it's like sagging under gravity over time. Gravity doesn't work this way, it works this way. So in terms of my gauge, as far as like deciding what size I want to knit, which is generally based off of a bust circumference, that would mean that the alpaca shouldn't really affect my choices in that regard. And also to be clear, I did block these. They didn't really change dramatically in blocking, but again, because it's a thing where it's like, it's mostly stretching under its own weight under gravity. Like a swatch just doesn't have that much of its own weight to stretch under. And I saw some suggestions of like, oh, you should attach like a little weight to it when it's drying after blocking to like simulate. But I'm like, how do you know that it's the right amount of weight and that you're not stretching it more than it would ever be stretched? Like that just seemed like such an imperfect science to me that I wasn't convinced that it had any value at all. Maybe by the end of this project, I'll be wishing that I did, but I found that confusing. But so my main conclusion from this was that I should not really be thinking much about the alpaca in terms of my horizontal dimensions. Another thing that I found is that seed stitch, conveniently, is noted to be less stretchy than stockinette and a lot of other knit stitches. So that I think also is going to help compensate a bit for stretching over time. Hopefully that'll kind of keep things a little bit more together. So based off the combination of those things, I kind of figured, okay, I think the more important factor here is me being at a small gauge and not so much the alpaca part. I feel like the alpaca part is going to be mostly mitigated by the seed stitch and it just being about the length, so maybe knitting it cropped will be nice in that regard anyway. It'll kind of help with my row gauge that is in fact short, so we'll see what happens there.
Hi, Editing Alley. I feel a need to add, I am going to be doing mid-project blocks here, like probably more than one, so that I have an idea of what's going on as I go through this project. So if you're listening to this like absolutely panicking, fear not, I will get information about blocking and growth and all that before I get too far along into things. I know that we're going off book here, so we will be mitigating.
But so when I was running the numbers of like, hey, this is the best measurement I would like it to actually be, this is the percentage by which my gauge is off, apply that to that number, so I need to knit the size that's actually targeting this number. You know, just all of the math we have to do, and we cannot be trusted to just knit on gauge. So I concluded, well, I think I actually concluded that based off that I should be knitting a size 4, but I don't think there's any world where I have enough yardage to knit a size 4. But so I am choosing to knit a size 3, hoping to get close to the measurements of a size 2, and like maybe this is one where I end up trying to accomplish a little bit more in blocking than I usually do. This is, as per usual, I am off the rails from the very beginning, but you know what? Usually it works out for me. So knock on wood that it will this time. But you know, I mean, my Peru trip was an adventure, and if this project also turns into one, that's just appropriate. So will this end up hyper cropped? Maybe. My plan is, which I usually do this anyway, but my plan is to finish the sleeves before I continue down the length of the body, because to me sleeve length is far more important than body length, because there is a range of where a sweater can hit me and I can still like it in terms of the body length. I like my sleeves a certain way. I have long arms and I like a long cozy sleeve, so I'll make sure those get done, and then we'll just see what length of sweater this ends up being. Is it normal? Is it cropped? Is it ultra cropped? Stay tuned. So I guess I should probably actually show you what I have so far. Before we get into that though, if you notice I'm wearing new glasses today, I want to tell you about our sponsor for today's video, Sojos. Sojos makes it easy to get prescription glasses that fit your style, like these ones that I picked out. Shocking that I would pick a tortoiseshell, I know. But they have tons of different styles you can browse, and it's as simple as clicking buy with RX lenses. It'll ask what type of lenses you need, like single vision for me, progressives, or even reading glasses. If you have a prescription form from your optometrist, you can upload it here, or you can enter it manually. There are so many options to customize your lenses, like blue light blocking, transition lenses, or extra thin lenses, and then you just add to cart like this. It's so simple to get your perfect glasses right from the comfort of home with no one rushing you, no one suggesting a million frames you don't like. Just easy, convenient, and custom for you. I wear glasses like 99% of the time because I just like them. I remember in 8th grade when I found out that I needed to get glasses, and I was so excited because I felt like I had always been a glasses person who just didn't have glasses yet. I don't believe in taking glasses off for special occasions, right? Like whether I'm going out somewhere nice or I'm just knitting along to my latest terrible reality TV obsession, glasses are just what I look like, and they can become such a key part of your personal style when you have enough choices to find the ones that feel perfect for you. But I've said this before, once in a while I'll have a day where it's just so much more practical to wear contact lenses. I'm gonna be like swimming or taking sunglasses on and off a million times, and on those days I have a whole new appreciation for glasses because I don't think about how comfy they are until I've had contacts in for the last 12 hours and it feels like my eyeballs are going to shrivel up and fall out. So slipping on a pair of Sojos after a day like that is top tier cozy, and because of their great selection, I feel more like myself with them on than I did without. So if you also need a pair of glasses that you love to put on, whether it's first thing in the morning or just at the end of the day, you can use my link in the description to check out all of Soho's styles, and at checkout, use my personal code to save 10% off your order. All the details are in the description. All right, now let me show you what I've got so far. So is that kind of a funny status because part of what I'm about to show you is actually about to get ripped out because I did it wrong. But here's where we are. Fit this all in frame, which, okay, so you know what? This is currently looking like it's not gonna be too small because I feel like the width of this is looking perfectly adequate. So, okay, this is the trapezoid shape of the back of that European shoulder construction that I was talking about. I feel like it's less obvious on that side because I already picked up stitches, but so this is the straight top, and then this is the like slope down the back of the shoulder, and then this edge is what is going to have sleeve stitches picked up and become part of the armholes. It was much easier, I feel like, to capture the trapezoidal shape of this when there was not a needle attached to this. Also, I think just laying flat, it's a lot more clear when this corner wants to like flop in. It doesn't really, you're just gonna have to trust me that it's a trapezoid shape, I'm afraid. It is, I promise. So thoughts from working on this. First of all, seed stitch, very pretty. I really like it. It's very fun and textured, very satisfying. It is a slow knit. Now, I don't mind doing ribbing. I do definitely prefer a 2x2 rib. I find a 2x2 rib goes much faster than a 1x1. So because seed stitch it's basically a 1x1 rib, just each row is offset from, where did my voice just go? Ugh. Each row is just offset from the one before it, so you're knitting purls and purling knits. So it works up at the pace of a 1x1 rib. So if you hate a 1x1 rib, can't recommend. I don't mind a 1x1 rib. I just do find that, like, as a fabric, this is just coming together more slowly than usual than it would if I were just working a stockinette. So that's definitely something to be aware of. It has made me very curious though about, I think there's a double seed, or no, I think moss stitch is often called double seed stitch. When I was trying to search double seed stitch to see if this was a thing, I was getting a lot of moss stitch, because moss stitch is sort of a vertical double seed stitch in that instead of alternating every other row and like knitting your knits and purling your purls, you have like 2 rows of a 1x1 rib and then you invert it. So that is not what I was thinking about, because that doesn't address the problem. Like, you're still working in a 1x1 rib in like a row by row sort of way. Whereas what I was wondering about is if you do the equivalent of a seed stitch where you're like knitting knits and purling purls, but you're doing each one for 2 stitches. So like knit, knit, purl, purl, and on the next row would be like purl, purl, knit, knit. Or what I think I found what you actually do is like in the moss stitch where you have 2 rows that are the same on top of each other. So it would be like knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, 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 knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit. Are you following what I'm saying at all? I have no idea. But so I've come to find out that I believe that is a thing. So this has made me curious to try the double moss stitch, where I wanted to do something with a lot of texture, but that wasn't quite this intensive to make. I feel like that would be interesting to try out. And so in terms of my progress, where's my wrong side? Okay, so again, trapezoid. Oh, maybe upside down was the way to hold this the whole time. I feel like it's a little more obvious there. But you see where these ends are poking out here. So that's where I started my second ball, which stresses me out a little bit, because looking at everything that is below that, does that look like a 1/10 of a sweater to you? I'm not sure if it looks like a 1/10 of a sweater. Granted, I also knit 2 swatches out of it, so I can definitely pilfer from these if I need to. I kind of need to like mentally add the area of these to that to really understand how much fabric one ball of this gives us, but I'm just a little skeptical. I am just wondering if perhaps this is going to devour yarn. I am very happy that this is a pattern that, like I said, I think would be really cute cropped, because I am now feeling like it might be really, really cropped. So we'll find out. But yeah, I'm just looking at this like, I don't feel like I got a lot of fabric out of that one ball. Like, does this look like more than 10% to you? And that's probably like 1/3 of the back. Like 3 of these would probably be long, but there's also like missing area here because of the shoulder arch. So like convert this to a rectangle and 3 of those is maybe the correct length. So 3 on the back, 3 on the front. There's a V-neck, so that buys us some yarn because there's not fabric in a really big space, but also there's cabling, which tends to chew up yarn. And so if front and back are 6 balls, that leaves us 2 each per sleeve, and the sleeves are all cabled and textured. Yeah, this I think this is going to be a yarn chicken project. I think it's going to just be a how long can I get this before I run out of yarn project. Which, good thing I picked a pattern that's cute cropped is all I have to say about that. Because there's no world where I get more of this yarn. I did look to see if you can buy the Manos de la Comunidad yarn online. You cannot, not that I could find. So we're just going to make whatever we can make, and we'll see what happens. So as for the part that I mentioned is not long for this world, last night I did a few rows. Basically you can see that line, and everything below that is the front. And after doing a few rows, realized I was not following the chart correctly. There's part of the chart where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like once it's established, like just this column is knits and this column is purls. And I didn't realize that some of the rows don't follow that. Like there are interruptions in these columns that I was not paying attention to. So it's terrible too, because at first I sat down with this chart and I was like, oh, this is actually like one of the simpler cable charts that I have yet encountered. Like I don't feel like my brain is breaking for the first half hour working on this, trying to understand what it wants me to do. Fantastic, we're off to the races. I was a little too confident. So I started it and went, oh, no, that's all wrong. So I have to rip that out and start again, which is unfortunate, but honestly probably for the best, because when I did my pickup, I picked up the correct number of stitches. I checked like 3 times, but then just as I was knitting the first row, a couple of times like something weird happened and I like lost the stitch that I had picked up, and I like tried to pick it up again in a way that would make it the same as the others, but it definitely was not the same as the others. And there's just a little bit more like slack in the fabric. I don't know if you can see that where those were. Stitches are just a little bit looser, and I feel like at an area where it is like a shoulder seam, like there is going to be pressure put on those stitches. It is probably for the best to start this over with a more structurally sound pickup. I just was too lazy to go back and do it for that very sort of discretionary purpose. But now that I messed up the chart, it's a little more necessary, so we're just gonna do it. Also, where else did I mess up? There was a spot on the back where is it? Oh, it's over here. So I just kind of ended up for some reason doing like a 1x1 rib for the last like inch of the row for like 3 or 4 rows. I just like forgot to be doing seed stitch. So I did let her back down and fix some of them. And I realized I made the mistake of trying to fix it from the side of the fabric where it's the first stitches of the row. It would have been much easier if I had fixed it from the other side, because I would have had the entire row to be in the flow of the seed stitch, and it would be very easy to understand which stitch this one should actually be at the top. So like what I need to go down and make it all the way along the way to keep it alternating properly and end up at the right stitch at the top. But instead I tried to do it from the other side. And so I was trying to figure out, based on looking ahead in the row, like, okay, this one on this row should be a knit stitch, this one should be a purl stitch. But I think I initially didn't realize just how far over it went. So I think I was referencing some that were incorrect. And so I did my best to fix it, but I don't think that it's perfect. But so here's, what does it look like on camera? So it's in this area. I think you can sort of see it. I mean, it definitely doesn't help that I pointed it out to you. I was debating, like, do I need to go back and try to fix this again? But I was honestly concerned about just messing it up again. And because it's a seed stitch, like laddering up, you have to like keep going back and forth between the two different sides to like knit it versus purl it. And it was just a headache. I wasn't convinced I would do a great job. And I was like, well, I mean, like, that's kind of going to be like going into the armpit anyway. Like, this is toward the bottom of where you're picking up stitches for the sleeve. And then like, if there is anywhere close the amount of ease there should be, like the ease kind of tends to end up like under your arm. So like, I think this is in a spot where like it's not worth going back and fixing, because it's just going to be kind of hidden anyway. I'm a little bit like, I hope I don't live to regret this, because just if I decide later that I hate it, it's just like going to be really buried and really hard to get back to once I pick up and I'm knitting the whole body in the round. And again, because you have to alternate the knits and the purls, it's so much more tedious than just picking up a drop stitch like all the way up a sweater wouldn't be that big of a deal. But doing the like knit purl all the way up a sweater with a crochet hook feels terrible. So I think I just need to make peace with it, because right now I'm not interested in fixing it, and I'm very not interested in fixing it later. So it's just gonna be this, I think. And yeah, that's currently what I have to show you of my Rivendell pullover. Okay, now some future plans to chat about. So I had asked about, okay, if I want to knit a hat that's like all over stockinette, but that can be reversed, and I can have a little design that I create that goes on the like headband flip up part, the brim. That's what that word is. I have never gotten such a unanimous response to anything I've ever asked on this channel. Like the comment section might as well have just been like the word muscle burra over and over and over and over. So it seems that there is exactly one pattern that is the answer to my problems. It is the muscle burra by Isolde Teague. I see the advantages here, right? I see the fact that it is at a like flexible gauge. It's not a fixed gauge. You just start from the center kind of pinhole, and then you just keep doing your increases until it reaches the circumference that you need it to be, and then you stop your increases. Makes perfect sense. What is giving me pause is, so I've seen people knit the muscle burr before, right? This is the one where you're basically knitting like a Kinder egg shape if you're in Canada, because I know those are not legal in the US, which is hilarious to me. Okay, Editing Alley, I decided to fact check myself real quick. Apparently there are Kinder eggs in the US now as of not very long ago. But they, to be clear, are different than our Kinder eggs. As I understand it, the law is that in the States you can't have something that is inedible inside of something edible. So here's a Kinder Surprise egg. You have the chocolate outer shell, and then inside you have this little plastic shell. That's the shape I'm referring to, that is the shape of the muscle burr hat. Inside that, there would be a toy. Apparently Americans aren't allowed to have this, so there's a Kinder Joy egg instead, which is in a different format. Anyway, Kinder Surprise, that's what I'm talking about. So sorry to those of you who may not have it. But so it's basically this like cylinder with like rounded enclosed tops and bottoms, right? And then you fold it up into itself to create the like typical hat shape. and then you fold up the brim to give you that, like, I guess in this case, quadruple thick brim, because all of the hat is already a double layer. What I don't understand is how, with my spatial reasoning that I was gifted in this life, how to figure out where on this cylinder I place the design that I want to be visible from one side, but not if you reverse the hat, and whether it should be oriented upside down or right side up based on which way I'm looking at it when I'm knitting, and what that produces in a finished object. I literally, I need to, this is the sort of thing where when this comes up in my job, like sometimes I'll have a client be like, oh, can we do like an accordion fold book? And I'm like, yes, great, absolutely. Let me print out like a teeny tiny little mock-up that I can fold around and understand like what touches what when you fold it what way. Because I cannot do that just like in my head looking at it flat on a screen. Why is that out of battery? You were just at a full battery. What the f? But because the muscle burra is this like enclosed cylinder shape, like I can't replicate that with paper. I can't have something that's like folding inside outside. So I'm like, do I just have to knit like a little itty bitty muscle burra just to play with it and just understand where things go? Like, do I have to swatch for the hat you don't have to swatch for just to have a little miniature to test out how the design, here's the thing, I'm hesitant to even voice this because I feel like there's a good chance that like someone's going to want to explain this to me in a way that they think makes perfect sense because spatial reasoning is very simple to them, and they will say things to me and I will just be like, this means absolutely nothing to me, but thank you so much for trying. But like, if you struggle with spatial reasoning like I do and you have figured out how to do this, would love to know. But just know that like, I think I'm pretty good at quite a few things. This is not self-deprecating. My brain is just so bad at this. So I am just hesitant on the muscle. I just feel like hats where the brim is in a fixed place and not like a weird spot in the middle of a cylinder where you have to fold it to even find the brim and then you fold, like I feel like it would be simpler on a different kind of hat pattern. But if you can explain it to me, let me know. Now, I also want to chat acquisitions this week. And first of all, I would like to be clear, no yarn acquisitions. I have not broken my yarn buying ban. And this feels like heroic levels of efforts lately to not break this because there have been two incredibly tempting opportunities. So number one being the Knitting for Olive event recently, where all of the proceeds were going to support people in Gaza, which like okay, pull at my heartstrings with my favorite yarn, like twist my arm, like under any other circumstances, I definitely would have bought a project's quantity of yarn on that day. And I actually considered buying a gift card on that day just to like support the initiative without buying yarn, but I was like, this feels like a loophole, because also part of what I'm trying to do is it's not just not accumulating yarn, it's trying not to like normalize to myself spending large quantities of money on yarn all the time at a rate faster than I can knit it. So since that's kind of also part of the goal, I didn't want to do that. I talked myself out of doing that, but it was very tempting. And then also the Knitting Loft in Toronto just had their annual anniversary sale. And I think it's like everything is 25% off, which is like a huge sale, right? It's not just like, do I want this exact yarn that's on sale? It's like whatever yarn my heart desires, it's on sale. So that also would have been a fantastic opportunity to pick up a project quantity of yarn for something, and I didn't. And I think I deserve a round of applause for that. So that is like peak level willpower that required. So the yarn buying ban still going strong. However, I do still have a couple of knitting related acquisitions. So one of them is, you might remember if you saw my stash organization video, my plate with the couch bin. I have this bin that lives beside my couch where like my current like active project bag lives, as well as my knitting binder and just all the sort of things that I like to have close at hand when I'm on the couch knitting. And I've been hoping to get rid of that in the organization process and store things other places, but just kind of realized like, no, I need them here. Like I need them handy. I don't like the bin. And I had been resisting putting any more like furniture in that corner as far as like a dedicated storage thing, because I just liked how it looked, how it was with just the lamp, and it felt nice and open. But I finally made peace with the fact that I think that like it just needs to be more functional than it has been, even if that makes it marginally less cute. So I got an IKEA cart. I was truthfully kind of hoping that it would be like shorter than the arm of my couch, though not hoping so hard that I measured first, obviously. So it's not. You can see it from the side, which I have mixed feelings about, but at least what you can see on top is my knitting binder, which is nice. So there's like my binder on top with all my tools in it, and then my project bag and my editing headphones live below that, and then there's my like scrappy ends bag and my massage gun down there. So everything is handy from the couch, and it's not like buried in a bin under other stuff and hard to get to. And I'm making peace with it. I think it's an improvement functionality wise. TBD if I can like stop noticing it every time I walk into the room, because I just like see it peeking up over the arm of the couch and I'm just like, I don't know. So this is why I was resistant to, there were a lot of suggestions like, oh, it would just be so practical. Just put in a little like end table, a little cubby, a little card, a little something to hold those things if you don't like a bin. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. That's even more intrusive to me than the bin is. I want there to be nothing in that corner. So truthfully, it's sort of on probation. Jury's still out on whether it will get to stay in that spot or if I might demote it somewhere else in the house to do a different job somewhere else where I care less about what it looks like. I don't know. Jury's out on that one, but it is a knitting related acquisition that did happen. A more exciting acquisition though, like I said, it was my birthday recently, and I didn't get the whole binder. I already had this. If you saw my stash organizing, you know that, but I did get a new page for my binder. So in my stash organizing video, I was debating, would I like to have a home for my Lucas Cypher needles, which are my main needles, the metal needles that I use all the time. Would I like for these to have a spot in here? Because they did come with their own like travel case when I got them, and it is quite a nice case, and I was really happy with it. But once I had gotten everything else set up in my binder, like this holds everything I use for my knitting, like all my silly little notions, all my needles, all my like cords for my needles, and my try-it-on tubing, and my stitch marker, like just everything is in here. And I was like, I kind of feel like my main needles should be 2. And I'd mentioned when I got my wood needles, my sort of backup set for travel. Why do I have no voice today? And I'd mentioned when I got my wood needles, sort of my backup travel set for when you can't have metal needles. I'd mentioned like, so these live here now. Kind of unfortunate that it's a different number of needles than my metal needle set, so I couldn't put these in my old metal needle case because I don't need them as frequently, and then my metal needles could live here, but there's more metal needles than there are of wood needles. And I had a couple people suggest a suggestion that if I were anyone else would be a very practical, very reasonable solution to this, which is like, well, just put your most used sizes of metal needles in there, because like you even said, you hardly ever use the big ones. Just leave the big ones in the original case and then put the wooden needles in the original case. And then you have all the metal needles you're using all the time in your binder close at hand. And like, yeah, that does make perfect sense. However, the idea of mixing and matching them like that is so deeply offensive to me that I don't, I know, like it was not even on the table. So welcome to that facet of my brain that is deeply uncompromising. But happy birthday to me. I didn't have to compromise. So thanks, Mom and Dad. And one of the things that is really nice about the binder, because all the pages are removable, I'll pop this out to show you. If I ever just want to take these somewhere with me, it folds in half like this, and now it's just this like super portable little thing that's actually smaller than my original needle case that these came in. So if I'm kind of just getting started on a project and I need to take it somewhere and I don't trust that I'm not gonna need to like change needle sizes or do something else unexpected, this is a super practical way to bring it along with me. So I will link this binder in the description below. So if you do choose to buy through that link rather than just like Googling it yourself, I will get a little bit of a cut of that purchase if you want to support the channel in that way, which I really appreciate. And because for my birthday, one of my gifts was a sort of sneaky phone call in that prepaid my Yoga Pass for me, so I don't have to pay for that this month. So I decided that with that savings, I would invest in a little like selfie monitor thing that snaps onto my phone just magnetically that shows me what my phone is seeing, rather than having to do what I talked about doing in my like everything behind the scenes of my YouTube channel that I made earlier this year, where I had my laptop set up like beside me here and then tethered to my phone and then like sharing my phone screen through a Zoom call on my laptop to be able to monitor. So I thought it's time to spend just like a little bit of money on making this setup less clunky. So we're trying that today for the first time. It's mostly working pretty well. There's a few sort of hiccups I'm kind of figuring out, but I'm hoping that they are all figure outable. So I'm hoping that that's going to be sort of net an improvement for the channel and for my process, just making it a little bit easier to set up my shots and not constantly looking back and forth between a laptop and a camera and a laptop and a camera and having to bring my laptop around everywhere, especially when I was doing my organizing series and I was setting up more shots in different places. It was very annoying to set those up, having to lug my laptop around with my phone and having to have somewhere my laptop could sit within cord's reach of the phone and where I could see it. It was just not ideal. And then doing it this way, it also lets me use my iPad for my filming notes instead, which also means that like if I need to stop and look anything up, it's much easier for me to do that in like an on-camera kind of way rather than having to like lean awkwardly over here to where my laptop used to live, type things in, and then like come back and tell you about them. You know, this is just a little bit more freeing to be able to do it this way and to not be so tethered. So hopefully I can figure out all the little sort of hiccups, but it should be an improvement for me, not really for you. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually make any difference to like the quality of what you're seeing. It just makes it easier for me to see what you're seeing, which is nice because there is a decent amount of setup effort that goes into this. Like I don't want to just leave my filming setup all the time in this room because it doesn't look nice. I don't want this room to look like a film studio 24/7. So there is some setup and takedown, and this is just something that I'm hoping will reduce just a little bit of that, and TBD if that turns out to be true, because today it definitely wasn't, because I just had to like figure out how to use the new thing and all the like, oh, if the laptop's not here plugged in for Zoom, oh, the phone used to be charging off that, oh, actually now my phone battery's dying. Like there's like new problems that it's brought up, so we will figure it out. All right, now that's all I've got for you on the knitting front today. So let's get into some off the needles and we'll jump into a reading update. Do I yet have a finished book to tell you about? No, I still don't. But it occurred to me that there are some book-related things that I still would like to tell you about. So first off the bat, I want to remind you that linked in the description always are both hard copies and audio versions of all the books that I'm talking about in the description. And I always link those audiobooks through Libro.fm because I think they're really great. You can choose which independent bookstore you want to support with your purchase, which is just awesome. And this week they announced they've actually become now a certified B Corp. So just officially validating their very cool, trying to contribute positive things to the world status, and I love that. And now the thing that made me realize that I do kind of have a book update for this week, despite that I haven't finished a book, is that I was so excited this week to get an email newsletter in my inbox from Nina LaCour, who is an author who I love her books so much, and she announced that she has a new adult book coming out next year called Meet Me in the Garden. It comes out, I think, not until like next summer, so this is very far away, but I'm so excited. And listen, it's nice to have things to look forward to right now. And also reminded me that there are a couple of upcoming books that are coming up much more quickly that I wanted to go ahead and pre-order. So I did that. I placed an order with my local independent bookstore for 2 books. So the first one upcoming is The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. Now, can you see any of her books in frame? Sort of. There. Sort of half of a book beside all the Nancy Drews. So that is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, which is my favorite of hers that I've read so far, but all of her books are phenomenal. So the seed of a lot of her books is like a big sensational news story that she then writes like a fictionalized version of as a thriller. And I think usually, if not always, as a YA thriller. And she's so good. Like I picked up the first book of hers that I read, Monday's Not Coming, on a whim because the cover was just so incredible. Shocking, I'm a graphic designer who loves books. Of course, I love a good book cover, but so this one just grabbed me, and I'm so grateful that it did because I love every Tiffany D. Jackson book that I ever read. So I'm so excited that she has a new one coming out in October called The Scammer, and I will read you a little blurb real quick. And actually, since I have my iPad here now, as discussed, I can just read it to you. So, New York Times bestselling author Tiffany D. Jackson delivers another stunning, ripped from the headlines thriller following a freshman girl whose college life is turned upside down when her roommate's ex-convict brother moves into their dorm and starts controlling their every move. And I just have so much faith in her as a writer that this is going to be an incredible book. And the second book that I was excited to pre-order is the next upcoming book from Christine Riccio, who I've also mentioned her on the channel. Any of her books in view? Actually, you can see Nina LaCour there. That's We're Okay by Nina LaCour, which is the first book of hers that I picked up. She is from, does she still live there? Is from, I am not sure offhand, but she's in some way strongly associated with San Francisco. And years ago, I was in San Francisco and I popped into a little independent bookstore and they had a section of local authors. So that was where I first found her book and read it. And I started reading it sitting at the pier with the sea lions and like a cannoli that I had picked up at an Italian bakery on the way. It was just like top tier, like life travel moments, you know? Anyway, is Christine Riccio front facing here? Oh, you know what? She was. So all the way over in this corner where there's now this little balloon dog taking a dump. Right beside that dog is her first book that came out, Again But Better, which has a stunning cover. So it used to be front facing and then it got nudged to make room for Pooping Balloon Dog. Honestly shocked that no one noticed that or said anything about that when it appeared. It's now been there for quite a while. So no longer any Christine Riccio books front facing, but they used to be. And so Christine has been a YouTuber forever. I was watching her book videos like years and years and years ago, like when we were both teenagers. And so to see her become an author and like a good, like a serious author, like this is not like a YouTuber gets a book deal and has a ghostwriter kind of situation, you know? And last year I was talking about her book, what is it called? Attached to the Hip. It's her like survivor themed rom-com book. I read that last summer and I absolutely tore through it. I loved that book. I also read her previous 2 books, enjoyed both of them too. So I'm very excited for her new book called 30, Flirty, and Forever Alone, which perfect 13 going on 30 reference for the millennials among us. And it's described as 27 dresses meets crazy ex-girlfriend in this witty, serendipitous rom-com with a magical twist. When your name literally means forever alone, it takes a lot of positive self-talk to stay optimistic in the hellscape that is dating. But on the cusp of 30, Ricky Ramona is determined to find her person. Columnist, therapist, podcaster, entrepreneur, Ricky is an overachiever who thrives on schedules. She can absolutely handle 2 weddings in 2 days and lock down someone to drag along as her +1. And yet she doesn't. And of course, hilarity and romance ensue from there. So I'm really excited for these 2 books. And I guess also just like PSA, if there's an author who you love and really want to support, pre-order their books. It really helps them because any books that have been pre-ordered in all of the weeks to months leading up to the release, those all count toward the first week sales of a book. So like in terms of it getting recognition and potentially charting as a bestseller, that's really important. And even if they're not going to be anywhere near that level, it's so important too, just in terms of showing the publisher how much interest there is in this book. And a publisher is going to try harder and put more energy behind a book that's already proven to be marketable, to be selling, which is sort of the endless loop of marketing of like, well, if it had been marketed first, maybe it would have sold anyway. You know, like it's all very confusing. The publishing landscape is wild. But so if there's an author who you would like to support, pre-ordering their books is a genuinely really, really helpful way to do that. That doesn't cost you any more money. And you can also pre-order through any bookstore you like. Your local independent bookstore would be more than happy to pre-order it for you. And I guess I just feel like reading feels more important right now than ever. I have long felt that one of the most important things that you can get out of reading is empathy. I think that there is something unique about reading a book as opposed to watching a TV show that really forces you to be inside the head of a particular character to understand why they operate the way that they do and what their motivations are. That is so valuable. It's such a good way to be exposed to life experiences that are very different than yours. And I think that especially reading fiction from people whose life experience is different than yours and their life experience feeds into their writing, it's such a good way to be like passively educating yourself in a way that is fun and not didactic and doesn't feel like homework. You just read a great book and it's just fun, and it just happens that at the same time you are learning about different life experiences and different cultures and your worldview is being broadened. And I just can't help but feel like that's extra important right now, maybe in a time when somehow even the very concept of empathy has become controversial. So on that note, thank you so much for coming to knit with me today. I would love to know, I mean, like we established that I'm very off the rails with my Rivendell. This is going to be probably an adventure of the project. I would love to know, what is the biggest risk that you've taken on a knitting project that actually paid off? Like, give me a glimmer of hope here, please. And if you'd like to be here next time, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already, but if you already have, you're my favorite, and I'll see you next time.